Hey, Chandler Bolt here. What's happening, y'all? Welcome to today's training. Excited to have you here. Sorry, I know we're getting started a minute behind. That's my fault. So I apologize for that. But we're going to get going. You guys are already doing this. If you can go ahead and comment in the chat and let me know where you're tuning in from and that you can hear me and see me. We're going to get things kicked off. A couple housekeeping items as we get started. Number one, this is live. All right. And we're going to be hanging out for an hour and some change, depending on how many questions you have at the end. So all I ask is, to make the best use of this time. I'll make you 3 promises up front. Number 1, you're going to have fun. Number 2, you're going to learn a lot. And then number 3, you're going to leave here with progress on your book. Okay. Those are my 3 promises to you. All that I ask is that you give me your undivided attention for this next hour and some change. All right. So close the door to your office if you need to, like I just did. Put your phone on do not disturb, whatever you need to do. And it's going to be time well spent. We're going to be talking about writing and publishing a book that grows your impact and grows your business. All right. Your chat goes directly to me and Brian. I see Victoria in the chat here says Ontario, Canada. We got Mukesh in Spain, Anna in Vegas, Robbie, Julie, Sharon in Poland. I love it. Richard, we've got Adelina in Canada. And then, if you're just joining us, if you'll just comment in the chat, let me know where you're tuning in from and that you can hear and see me and us. And I'll pass it to Brian and we'll get things kicked off.
No, absolutely. I love that you said close the door and get it going. My son, he just knocked on the door. He's like, Dad, I look like the kid from Home Alone that goes, like just now. So get prepped to close the door. This is the time where we get to just dive in. And by the way, if we haven't met yet before, my name is Brian. I am our head coach at Think Media, kind of oversee our customer success department. And one of the things that we often talk about on our team is how can we find a win for our students today? Like essentially that's what we talk about every single day is how can we find a win for them? Whether that's in like a one-on-one coaching, group coaching, in an event that we're doing and what have you. And the reason why I bring that up is because I really believe that today could be a really, really, really strong win for you if we just dive into it. If we just take the right notes, if we're asking the right questions, and if we really take a good look at what it is that our channel is, our channels, right, are about, and where we can go with this. One of the things that we love at Think Media is the fact that, YouTube is such a long game for us, right? Like there's longevity in YouTube. You can get views for weeks, months, and years and build your impact, build your influence, and even build your income along the way as well. But what's really cool with that is when you take what you have started to build with your YouTube channel and partner that with a book, like there's something special like that can absolutely happen. And it's this exponential growth, kind of like a snowball that just continues to go. And whether that's you trying to make an impact in the world on this particular subject that you're working on, or you want to grow your business, my goodness, when you tie the two together, something huge happens. And so I'm excited about today. I don't want to take too much time here. So let me just, if you haven't had a chance to meet Chandler yet, first off, dude is a legend. So we're so excited that we get to hang out with him today for the next hour and some change. And if you haven't met him, right, he's an investor, CEO of selfpublishing.com, Forbes 30 under 30 honoree, author of 7 best-selling books, including his most recent, which is called Published. I've read it. It's so good. And it's so impactful. Yes, that's the one. And he's also, he's a host of the 7-Figure Principles podcast, Self-Publishing School podcast. Man, he just keeps going. And so I'm excited about today. I can't wait to see what we do with this. So buckle your seatbelts, y'all, and let's just jump right into it. Let's go, Chandler.
Let's do it. I appreciate that, Brian. I love your guys' crew. So I'm excited to be here. Let me just share my screen here, y'all. It's going to look a little bit funky for about 2 seconds, and then it'll be all good. But if you guys will just comment in the chat one more time, you should now be able to see my screen and just see me. So if you'll comment in the chat and confirm that, what we're going to be talking about today is the future of publishing and the proven path to write and launch your book to 10,000 copies sold. You're going to want to stick around all the way to the end. And yes, Allison, this does apply to ebooks and digital info products as well. You're going to want to stick around to the end. And if you do, you'll get a copy of my slides, my notes, and a digital copy of my book. All right. I see we got a bunch of people in the chat saying that you can hear me and see me. I love it. Thank you. And So stick around to the end. You'll get a bunch of freebies. That's our way of just saying thanks for being here and for staying all the way to the end. So how many of you have heard of this guy or this book? Right? This guy is Robert Kiyosaki. This book is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. When I was 16 years old, my dad handed me this book, and it changed my life forever. It introduced me to a couple concepts that I now wholeheartedly believe in. The first one is that books change lives. Right? How many of you have had your life changed by reading a book? If your hand's not up, you should probably read more. All right. So books change lives. They change the lives of readers, but they also, as I've discovered since then, change the lives of authors. Right? We always say it's not about the book. It's about who you become in the process of writing and publishing that book. And when Robert came on my podcast, he talked about how life-changing this book was as an author. Right. And so this book showed me that books change lives. It introduced me to this concept of passive income through real estate, which I got really excited about, but then realized, I'm 16 at the time. I don't have $40,000 to put down on a duplex. So I kind of gave up on passive income, put it on the maybe someday list, went off to school to learn how to run a business. Now I went to College of Charleston, and pretty quickly once I got there, I realized I'm learning how to run a business from professors who have never ran businesses, which that made absolutely no sense to me. So I decided to drop out. Now, right before I dropped out, I studied abroad in Austria. All right. And this is a picture of me snowboarding there in Austria. And a few days before this picture was taken, I published my first book. Now, I remember being on the chairlift, going back up the mountain. And I remember talking to a friend, and he said, Chandler, I heard that you published this book. I heard that it's doing pretty well. Question for you. Is the book actually making any money? And I thought for a second, and I said, you know what? Actually, yes. While we were snowboarding all day yesterday, the book made over $400. Right? What a magical moment. It was, kind of as if as I said that, as those words came out of my mouth, I realized what had happened. This was that passive income thing, right? It was the thing that I thought about, dreamed about, and quite frankly, thought would never happen, right? People were buying my book all around the world in countries that I'd never even been to, right? So to answer his question, did the book make any money? Yeah, it started making a few $1,000s a month in royalties, and it continues to bring in monthly royalty checks every month to this day. All right. And so what I learned in this process is, I like to say that a book is kind of like this key that opens the door to Narnia. All right, forgive the cheesy analogy, but how many of you have seen the movies? Maybe you've read the books, Chronicles of Narnia, right? If you have, you know that they discover this door that opens up this magical world that they didn't previously know existed, right? And so what I've seen is that a book is a key that opens this door to this all of these opportunities that only exist for published authors, right? And let me walk you through what I mean by that. Now, if you're not taking notes, now's a great time to start. Grab a piece of paper. At the top of that paper, or whatever you're taking notes with, write out this phrase, because of my book. Because of my book, ... All right, I see we got some Narnia fans in the house. I love it. So I want you to dream with me a little bit. Let's assume a year into the future, 3 years into the future, and what opportunities do you want your book to open up for you? Right? What does your personal version of Narnia look like? All right. Now, if you're curious, I think Sean has done this incredibly well with YouTube Secrets, right? And he came on the podcast maybe even twice, at least once, to talk about all of the opportunities that had opened up for him and, what's happened because of his book. All right. So we're dreaming a little bit. Dream with me, write out what you're thinking of. And while you're doing that, I'm going to walk you through what it looked like for me, just for some inspiration. All right. So because of my first book, I started getting interviewed for top podcasts. I got featured on the Huffington Post. I got offered a 7-figure digital publishing deal. I built an email list, right? From that book, I started a business. There was no master plan. All of these opportunities just started to open up because of the book itself, right? So I'm a firm believer, just from firsthand experience and from helping a bunch of people through this process, that a book is the best and the fastest way to grow your impact, your income, and your business if you have one. All right. And so what I want to talk about is that. All right. Now, if you haven't got the chance to meet yet, my name's Chandler Bolt. I'm from a small town called Walhalla, South Carolina. You've probably never heard of it. All right. And I've written 7 books myself, as Brian mentioned. My company's helped over 7,000 people publish. We publish about 2 to 5 books a day. We published 4 yesterday. All right. And my company, selfpublishing.com, is a company I started and grew from 0 to over $65 million in the last just under a decade. All right. And as Brian mentioned, Forbes 30 under 30, all that stuff. But I did this despite being a C- English student. Okay. So I promise if I can do it, you definitely can. And one kind of quick fun fact, and something not a ton of people know about me, is that my brother plays in the Grammy-nominated rock and roll band called Need to Breathe. We got any Need to Breathe fans in the house? I think this might have been one of the ways that Sean and I actually originally got connected. But this is him here, Seth, and maybe you've heard of his other business. It's called Bolt Farm Tree Houses, which, you know, if you've seen the Netflix show, it's called World's Most Amazing Vacation Rentals. That's him and his wife. And then you may have seen their Instagram. They got massive Instagram, all that stuff. This has nothing to do with my presentation other than, I guess, 2 things. One, I'd be a bad brother if I didn't mention it. So if you never checked out Need to Breathe or Bolt Farm Tree Houses, you should check them out. And it looks like we got a bunch of fans actually in the house, which is fun. That's great. It looks like Beth, Alicia, a bunch of other folks. I love that. I love it. All right. I'm making a couple notes here. Somebody says, "Oh, my favorite band ever," right? So I guess that's the first thing is, you know, I'd be a bad brother if I didn't mention it. But secondly, and maybe more importantly for you, is the first book I ever wrote, I wrote with my brother. And we wrote the rough draft in a week, and I'm going to walk you through the process of how we did that here on this training. Okay, so today I want to break this presentation into 3 parts. We're going to talk about self-publishing versus traditional publishing. Which one should you choose? Then we'll talk about the 3 steps to successfully write your book. Then how do you launch the book to generate royalties and clients? All right, and then at the end, I'm going to take a couple minutes and share with you how you can work with us personally at selfpublishing.com to go faster, further with your book. All right. Now, I'm also going to kind of weave this throughout. This is fun. So we've helped over 100 authors publish in the last 60 days or so. There's 5 things that those authors had in common that you can replicate. All right. And I'm going to weave those 5 things throughout the training here today. Now, again, we've helped thousands of authors in over 91 countries. So this works if you work. And a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today will be nonfiction focused, but this works in any genre, any language, all that stuff. So I'll just give that disclaimer up front because people ask me about that all the time. All right. So lesson 1, self-publishing versus traditional publishing. Which one should you choose? So if you don't know, there's been a massive shift in the publishing industry over the last couple of decades. All right. And it's a shift away from traditional publishing and towards self-publishing, right? Self-publishing has become the preferred option for most authors, right? It used to be the backup plan. It was like the thing that you only did if you couldn't get a publishing deal. All right. And now, again, it's become the preferred option for most authors. Okay. But the average author only sells 100 copies of their book. All right. Which is not very good. So the shift, and so maybe you knew this, it's, you know, the only way you used to be able to sell books was to get into bookstores. The only way to get into bookstores was to have a publisher. The only way to have a publisher was to have an agent, and, right? There's all these gatekeepers and middlemen in that process. Well, now, and this is a crazy stat, is, you know, 70% of all books sold are sold on Amazon and other online retailers. All right. And you don't need a publisher to publish on Amazon, right? So distribution has really been democratized in the publishing world, but there's a few other main differences, right? There's royalty rates, there's cost to publish, and there's the time that it takes. Now, I'll walk through these one by one, starting with royalty rates. So if you traditionally publish, you're lucky if you get 8 to 12% per book, right? So let's call it $1, maybe $2 a book. All right. Now, if you self-publish, it might be $5, $6, $7 a book. All right. So that's the big difference is it's a lot, right? The royalties are way higher when you self-publish. And where this really compounds is over your first 10,000 copies sold, right? So if you're traditionally publishing, you're lucky if you even bring in 10 grand on those first 10,000 copies sold. If you're self-published, that might be 30, 40, 50, $60,000 in royalties, right? So huge difference in royalties. Now, what about the cost to actually publish this thing though, right? So if you traditionally publish, obviously they're covering the cost for you in exchange for taking the lion's share of the royalties, right? Then there's what's called hybrid publishing. All right. This is where you're essentially paying someone to publish your book. So this could be, it's typically somewhere in the $10,000 to $50,000 range. All right. And you're paying them to publish and to take a royalty. They'll typically take a royalty as well. All right. And then self-publishing, obviously you're covering the cost of publishing yourself. I like to say self-publishing is entrepreneurial publishing, right? You're betting on yourself, but that means you're covering the cost up front. So there's kind of three main costs to get a book published. There's editing, there's cover design, and then there's formatting. All right. Now, if you don't know what you're doing, this can be 5, 10, 15 grand or more. But if you do know what you're doing, you can typically get this done for a few $1,000s. Right. So this is one of the big ways that we help people at selfpublishing.com is we can, do all of this for you. Cover design, formatting, editing, if you choose so, when we work together. All right. And our goal here is to save you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in this process and to keep you from having to hire a bunch of different people. All right. So that's the cost to publish this thing. Now, what about the other cost? That's the cost of your time. All right. And that's the cost of your time, right? Now, this is a cost that not a lot of people think about, but how much is your time worth, right? Is it $20 an hour? Well, that's every 5 additional hours. It's $100 worth of your time that you're investing into this project, right? So if you're traditionally publishing, it's going to take you a minimum of 2 years, probably longer, right? Then if you're self-publishing, it might take you a year. It might take you a decade, right? Depending on how self-disciplined you are. But then we find on average with our authors at selfpublishing.com, it takes them somewhere between 9 to 18 months, right? So our big goal here is to save you hundreds of hours in the process, right? By giving you a proven process and accountability to follow that process. All right. So the long and short of it is for 99.9% of people here, it makes more sense to self-publish. The only time it makes sense to traditionally publish is if you got a massive audience and you can get a big advance, right? And even then, sometimes it makes more sense to self-publish, right? Now, this brings me back to the 5 things those 100+ authors did to publish successfully. Number 1, they chose to self-publish. Right? They realized they could go faster, further by self-publishing their book. And I know that Sean has chosen this route as well. Right? So let's move into lesson number 2. Everybody tracking so far? Is this helpful? So I want to do a quick poll as we start this lesson. All right. So how many of you know what you want to write about? If that's you, type in the chat, I have an idea. All right. How many of you aren't quite sure what you want to write about? If that's you, type not sure in the chat. All right. And then how many of you have too many ideas? If that's you, type too many ideas in the chat. All right. And I want to hear from every single person here. We got about a couple hundred people here live. Okay. So comment in the chat. I have an idea, not sure, or too many ideas. Depending on where you're at. I see Robbie says this is incredible information. Thank you, Robbie. Looks like Beth has an idea. So does Laura. Jaden, Jennifer, Michelle, Cheryl, a bunch more folks. We've got Sophia says not sure. Okay, a bunch more folks saying not sure. Aranon, Victoria, okay. We got people who are writing currently. Mayer says already written. That's incredible. Nice work. And then, wow, 28 chapters. A bunch of people saying, hey, too many ideas. Colleen says too many ideas, all caps. Yeah. All right. A lot of people know the feeling. So I'm going to break this into two parts, and this will be helpful no matter where you're at with your book idea. All right. The first part is what I call the idea finder. All right. So if you're in the not sure camp, ask yourself these three questions right now. Feel free to take a picture of this slide. All right. We're in idea generation mode. We're kind of, brainstorming ideas. This is really just 4 questions to ask. The first one is typically the best one for most people. So what do you get paid for, or what's your expertise? Chances are you have months, years, maybe even more than that of experience in the thing that you do. And if I were to try to do what you do today, there would be this big gap. And it's the gap between all the things you know from all your experience and what I know on day one, right? And in that gap is a really great book, right? And so it's probably the things that you wish you knew beforehand. Maybe if you've already got a YouTube channel, you're working with the Think Media crew, like maybe this is your most popular videos, right? It's the stuff you've already created content on and have expertise on. It's a good place to start. Now, maybe, there's other questions here, prompts like, what are you passionate about? What do you know a lot about? What do people come to you for advice on? Or if you're a business owner, what are the broken record conversations that you just keep repeating over and over and over, right? And you're probably tired of talking about it. Well, the best way to stop talking about that thing is to write a book on it and then point to the book. And then the book will be one of the best things you've ever done to grow your business. All right, so hopefully we've got some ideas flying. I'll give you a couple examples. This is one of our authors, Kat Wonder. She has a passion for yoga. She turned that passion for yoga into a book, turned that book into a business. She says, thanks to my successful launch, my business has boomed an extra $30,000 this month, right? So she got 10 clients at $3,000 a piece within a month of her launch from her book. So that's a good nonfiction example. A lot of people want to write fiction, and we've got a whole fiction arm of the company, right? So this is Ashley Emma. She's one of our fiction authors. She used personal life experience to write a book called Undercover Amish, right? And the book is selling crazy well. It's a fiction book, right? And then a lot of people want to write a memoir or a story about their life. Well, we've got memoir training. This is one of our memoir authors, Lisa Fleetwood, wrote a memoir about her dogs, right? So some fun examples here. Hopefully we've got some ideas flowing. Now, what about all the other folks who said, hey, I've got way too many ideas? All right. So we only have 2 rules when we work with people at selfpublishing.com. Rule number 1 is do not edit while you write. All right. Do not edit while you write. Write that down. Some of you need to put that on your computer. We all know someone who has 5 perfectly written chapters in their unfinished book. All right, maybe that's you. But then rule number 2 is you can't write more than 1 book at a time. All right, try to catch 2 rabbits, you'll end up catching neither. So you got to focus on one idea and write and publish that 1 book first. How do you do that? Right? We ask yourself these 3 questions. And so what I want you to do right now is I want you to ask yourself these 3 questions. Try and narrow in on one idea. You're going to need this in just a second. And then once you've done that, type the phrase one idea in the chat. All right, if you've got one idea. So question 1, which one can I finish the fastest? So maybe you have the most content or life experience on this topic. Question 2, which one am I most likely to finish? So not only are you going to get started with this thing, but you're going to take it all the way to the finish line. All right. And then question 3, which one is going to make me happy? All right. So you're going to enjoy actually writing and publishing this book. So those are the 3 questions to ask. Narrow in on one idea and then type the phrase one idea in the chat. All right. I love it. One idea, Adelina, Jones, Cynthia, Michael, Lanny, Shalonda, Roger, Laura, Jennifer, Terry, a bunch more folks. Amazing. Yeah, and Shane, we've got a bunch of experience writing fantasy books. Yep. So awesome. We've narrowed in on one idea. Now, how do we write this thing? I mentioned earlier, I hated writing. I'm a C-level English student and a college dropout with ADHD. So if there was a least likely to publish list, it would just be my face. All right. So not only was I not good at it, but I didn't like it. But I'm a big fan of this concept. Maybe you've heard of it. It's called who, not how. Right. So who, not how says that anytime I run into a problem in my life or in my business, I ask the question, who has solved this before, not how do I solve it? Because if I can figure out the who, they know the how. Right. And I can pay them for a shortcut and save a lot of time, money, and energy in the process. So who, not how. When I decided to write my first book, I took that to heart. I found a mentor who had done it. He introduced me to the how to get started. All right. And it's the kernel of the idea that's what's become what I call the MORE writing method. Okay. So the MORE is an acronym and the M stands for mind map. All right. How many of you have heard of mind map? Probably everyone here. Right? This is not a new concept. What's new is using it. So I want you to grab a piece of paper. All right. Grab a piece of paper. And once you've got it, so a little blank piece of paper. Once you've got it, type in the chat, I have a piece of paper. All right. And draw a circle in the middle of the page. Draw a circle in the middle of the page. And then once you've done that, I want you to write your book topic in the middle of the page. All right. So this is that one idea that you just came up with. All right. A bunch of people have paper. Love it. Michael, Lanny, Donna, Melvin, Deborah. Okay. All right. Write that book topic in the middle of the page. All right. And step 2. And I'm about to put 2 minutes on the clock. I want you to write out everything that you can think of on this topic. Okay? So what are the stories that you have? What are the examples that you have? Lessons you've learned, books that you've read, anything you can think of. No filter. On your mark, get set. We're mind mapping. Let's mind map. Keep it up, y'all. About 45 seconds left. Keep going. We're mind mapping. Let's do it. About 15 seconds left. Final thoughts. Five, four, three, two, one, and pencils down. Just kidding. Hey, how many of you made progress on your mind map during that 2 minutes? If you made progress, type in the chat, I made progress. All right, you should have something that's starting to look a little bit like this. right? You're on your way to completing step 1 in the more writing method and creating your mind map. Now, good news, bad news. The good news is it looks like a bunch of you have made progress. All right, I got a bunch of people typing in the chat. I made progress. Donna, I love it. Jaden says, I made so much progress. Right, Beth, Lanny, Nancy, Brenda. Wow, awesome. A bunch more folks. Okay. And so that's good news. Bad news is, as you probably guessed, it takes more than 2 minutes to mind map a book. So what I'd encourage you to do is take 15 minutes as soon as this webinar is over or tonight before you go to bed and try and finish your mind map. All right, how many of you can commit to that? If you can commit to that, type I'm committed in the chat. Or if you can commit to that, type I'm committed in the chat. If you do, I promise it's going to make the whole rest of this writing process easier. All right. And I know this crew's committed because we've worked with a bunch of you on your books. All right. So we got a bunch of people saying I'm committed in the chat. So now that you've started mind mapping, you're going to move into the O in the more writing method, which stands for outline. All right. And so you're going to group groups of ideas into themes or sections. Maybe you've already started doing this intuitively. All right. And so let's say you got 5 groups of ideas. Well, those are the 5 sections for your book. And now all of a sudden you just order them in the order that you want to cover them in the book, drill down about 3 chapters per section. Now you've got an outline that you can use to write the rough draft, right? So that moves into the R of the more writing method, which is rough draft. Okay. And you're going to write your rough draft 1 chapter at a time using this same process, right? So mind map, outline, and then write the chapter and repeat that process chapter by chapter by chapter, right? Now, how many of you speak better than you write? Right, we've got some content creators in the house. We've got some YouTubers in the house. My hunch is a good bit of you. So if you're anything like me and you speak better than you write, well, then just do that, right? Choose your own adventure, mind map, outline, speak the chapter, get it transcribed, repeat that process chapter by chapter by chapter, all right? So that's the rough draft process. Now, the question I get asked all the time is, hey, how fast can I finish a rough draft? Well, the ideal length of a book is about 15 to 60,000 words. So whether you write it or speak it, you can get a super rough draft done in as little as a weekend, which I know that's an extreme example. It's a rough draft, right? But let's say even if you just say, hey, I'm going to write 1,000 words a day for 30 days straight. That's what we call the 30-day rough draft challenge. Right? You've got over 30,000 words written in that time, which is most of the length of a draft. Right? So my point here is it can happen a whole lot faster than you think. All right. And this brings me back to the 5 things those 100+ authors did. Number 2, they committed to getting their rough draft done. Okay. This is super important. All right. If your rough draft's not done yet, nothing else matters. You got to laser focus on getting this rough draft done. If we end up working together, we're going to have one of our coaches and our team keep you laser focused on this next milestone, right? So that you can get your rough draft done. This is super, super, super important. All right. So let's move to lesson 3. All right. How do you successfully launch and generate royalties or clients from this book launch? Everybody still tracking with me? I love it. All right. So, I mentioned earlier, I dropped out of school. I think, hey, I'm going to be an overnight success. I had a mentor one time who said, Chandler, it takes 10 years to become an overnight success. And I found that to be true because what actually happened is about 18 months later, I woke up to this. All right, you can see this on the screen. This is that all of my bank accounts are negative. All right. In fact, I'd borrowed over $15,000 in triple F financing. You guys ever heard of that? Triple F financing is what I call it. Friends, family, and fools. All right, these are only people dumb enough to give you money at this stage of your business. And so all my bank accounts are negative. I borrowed this money. Literally this same day, I went to make myself some food, and all I had were these 2 end pieces of a loaf of bread. And so I made myself a double end piece peanut butter sandwich. All right, which is just as dry as you're thinking. It's not good. It's funny. I was giving a talk the other day, and the lady said, this looks like a frowny face in the sandwich. And yes, this is how I felt, right? I'm about to fail at dropping out of school. which in my mind was the biggest failure that I could think of at the time. And so again, I asked that who, not how question, right? I went to a mentor. I said, what am I doing wrong and how do I fix it? And he said, well, you need to meet Sam. I said, okay, perfect. Who's Sam and why do I need to know him? And he said, well, Sam is sales and marketing. Right? Sam is sales and marketing. All right. And so he said, hey, if you don't get good at it, your business is going to continue to struggle. Your books won't sell. But if you do get good at it, you can write your own paycheck. Your business will grow as fast as you want. Your books will sell because people always need more leads and they always need more customers. Right? Now, how many of you have went to a sermon or read a book or saw a talk or whatever, and you instantly thought like, hey, I know exactly who needs to hear this. And I know who I'm going to send this to. And meanwhile, who needs to hear it? It's you. Right? You're the one that needs to hear it. But the human condition, we think about the other person. So that's what I thought when I got this advice. Because how many of you hate sales and marketing? If that's you, type I hate Sam in the chat. Right? So if you do, you were like I was. And so I said, hey, there's only one problem with this advice. It's not going to work for me. Right? Because I don't like sales and marketing. And he said, he gave me this advice. He challenged me with love, and I'm going to do the same to you. And I see, yeah, we got some folks saying I hate Sam. So, Jennifer, Donna, Jonathan, Terry, a bunch of other folks. I'm going to give you this advice as well. You don't have to like it, but you do have to learn it. Ooh, shoot. Right? You don't have to like it, but you do have to learn it. If you build it, they will not come. Right? You got to tell them about it. And if you want to change lives through this book, you can't change their life if they don't read it. Right? They can't read it if they don't buy it. They can't buy it if they don't know about it. So they got to know about it. And that means you getting really, really good at SAM, at sales and marketing. And so I did this. I had really no other option. I started studying sales and marketing. And I used what I learned to launch another book. I used that book to launch a business. In the first 55 days, that book brought in 3,300 leads and $92,000 in sales for my business, right? It started unlocking my personal version of Narnia. I got featured in Business Insider and a bunch of other places, right? The business went from 0 to $1.32 million in the next 11 months. And the best part is it still brings in leads in business every month, all right? So what I want to talk about here are the 3 steps to successfully launch your book, all right? And the 3 steps that I used. So step 1 is to get a good cover that grabs attention. All right. People say don't judge a book by its cover, right? But we all judge books by their cover. So you need to have a good one. Now, a good book cover does 3 things. Okay. Number 1, it grabs attention. I want you to think of your cover like a billboard for your book, or maybe for some of you, better analogy is your YouTube thumbnail. Right? It grabs attention. So you notice this grabs attention, right? It's red. The title is easy to read. And then your prospect or potential reader instantly understands what the book's about and whether or not it's for them. Right? So what do you think this book's about? It's about how to publish a book. Right? So that's the process. That's step 1. I highly recommend grab a copy of this book if you haven't already. If you prefer audiobooks, you can download it on Audible, or even if you have Spotify Premium, it's free there. Just go download it. And there's a whole chapter on this. It's page 89, I think it is, and chapter 11. Yeah, there's a diagram on how to create a good book cover. There's a whole chapter on this. And there's also a whole chapter on step 2 and step 3. So on building a launch team and on getting reviews. So I'll talk about this briefly, but if you want to go in more in depth, grab the book. So if you've never heard of a launch team is a small group of people who support your book, right? I know Sean did this with his book launch. It could be 15, 50, 100 plus people. There's what they agree to do, which is to read your book ahead of time and leave a review on day 1. Super, super important. Okay, so now all of a sudden you've got maybe even dozens of reviews on day 1. And then there's what they get in return. right? Maybe you give them a free digital copy of the book, their name in the book, they get to be a part of the launch. That's the launch team. If you just do one thing, do this. All right. Now, what happens when you follow these steps? So here's a great example, Eileen Wilder. So she was on a training just like this, all right, sitting in your metaphorical seat. Right? And at the end of the webinar, she said, Chandler, I don't even fully know what I want to write about, but I trust you and I trust the process. Let's work together. All right. And so she booked a call with my team. She signed up to work with us. And we helped her write and publish this book called The Brave Body Method. Right? The book did so well that next thing she knew, she was front and center in Barnes & Noble doing a book signing. Right? And that's the power of implementing what you learned here today and taking action. Right? And so I want to cover one last thing on this point, which is how do you actually make money from the book? Right? So there's two things here. There's two paths. There's book royalties, and then there's using a book to grow your business. All right. Now, how many of you are entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs? If that's you, type entrepreneur in the chat. I'll come back to this. All right. Now, whether you are or not, you probably want to maximize your royalties. Right? Because let's say, in a random month, years from now, you sell 100 copies. Well, that's a few $100 in royalty checks that keep showing up. So one of the simplest ways you can maximize your royalties is also one of the biggest mistakes I see a lot of authors make is they don't publish their book in all three formats, right? So you need to publish your book in ebook, print, and audio, right? So that's a simple thing to implement. But then let's talk about using the book to grow your business. All right. I see we got a lot of entrepreneurs in here. I love it. Roger, Myra, Elaine, I think it is, or Alaine, Christine, David, Steve, Stefan. Okay, way more than I can read. So if that's you, use the book to grow your business, right? To get clients. I could teach a whole nother training on this, right? And this book right here has brought in tens of millions of dollars in sales for selfpublishing.com, right? It brought in about, I think, $285,000 over the weekend. Okay, so this is the best thing I've ever done to grow my business. But you got to do it strategically, right? And integrate it into your business to successfully drive clients. So I'll give you a couple examples here. This is Otakar Kletke. She says 9 months bestseller, over 10,000 copies sold. Thank you, SBS. She says, if you're on your journey, don't give up. When you publish a Kindle book, don't stop. Make it all formats. I wouldn't be selling 1,000+ books monthly if I didn't do that. And if I can do it despite English being my second language, so can you. Right? That's a great example there. Another great example on the business side, this is David McKay. He's one of our authors. He emailed me the other day. He said, Chandler, it's been a year since I started working with you guys. He published 2 books. They had already brought in over $10,000 in royalty checks. Not bad. But more importantly, over $45,000 in business directly from his book, right? For his business. He says his book is bringing in about 30 to 40 leads per week, which entrepreneurs, you know what you could do with that. And instead of paying for leads, he's getting paid to get leads. All right. So pretty powerful. This brings me back to the 5 things those 100+ authors did. All right. Number 3, they became friends with Sam, with sales and marketing, right? They realized I don't have to like it, but I do have to learn it. And I need to be in the driver's seat for my book and marketing it, right? This is super, super, super important. So let's recap what we've covered so far. We got a few more things to cover. All right. So we talked about 3 things. Number 1, self-publishing versus traditional publishing. Number 2, we talked about the 3 steps to writing your book. We got a lot of people with progress on their mind maps, a lot of people committed to getting those mind maps done. And then lesson number 3, we talked about how to successfully launch your book to generate royalties and clients. All right. And so the question I get asked all the time at this point is, Chandler, will this work for me and where I'm at? Right. So I haven't even started yet. Can you help me? And then, hey, I've already published a book and it's not going really well. Like, can this work for that? And then the bigger question I get asked is, hey, can you just help me implement some of the stuff you taught? All right. And the answer to both of those questions is yes. This is exactly why I created selfpublishing.com. And this is exactly why we're creating the future of publishing. All right. We want to put the power back in the hands of authors. Right. You keep all your rights and royalties. And we're an online education company. We teach people the process and we help them get their books published. All right. Now, more practically, what that looks like, I would say, selfpublishing.com is kind of like a mix between Indiana Jones and Jillian Michaels. All right. So Indiana Jones, we're going to blaze the trail. All right. And, our goal is to save you hundreds of hours in the process, thousands of dollars in the process, and to help you write and publish a better book that sells more copies. Right. And then Jillian Michaels, we're going to hold you accountable to do the work. Right. And so, if you're here right now, obviously this book's important to you, but there's a reason why it's not done. Or maybe if it's done, it's not published or selling as well as you want it to. And that's because you need this 1-2 punch, right? A proven process and accountability to that process. Okay. So what this looks like is we're going to start by creating a custom plan for you and your book, and then a custom program around your book. All right. Then we're going to pair you up with a coach who's going to work with you one-on-one throughout the process. You'll also get access to hundreds of group coaching calls over the next year, a bunch of resources to help you be more successful. All right. And then the final piece, people get super excited about this, is we do all the final mile of publishing for you. Okay. So there's all these things you got to do to successfully publish. And that final mile, we do it for you. Again, you keep all your rights and royalties. So we'll design a best-selling book cover using the principles I just taught. We'll do it for you. We'll format the book so it looks really good for you. We'll purchase an ISBN on your behalf, right? We'll optimize your book description. We'll upload the book and get it published. All these things, we do it for you. This saves you a ton of time, hassle, learning all this stuff. It's really confusing and really expensive, and we'll save you all that when you work with us. Okay, so this brings me back to the 5 things that those 100+ authors did, right? Number 4, this is a big one. All of these folks asked the who, not how question, right? And so they decided to get help. Many of them are on a webinar just like this a few months ago, a year ago. And they said, hey, who is the best at this? Well, selfpublishing.com, Chandler Bolt, right? This is obviously why Sean and the Think Media team have brought me in here as well, because they know we're really good at this, right? And we're the who. So if you've enjoyed this webinar and you want to take the next step with your book, you're excited to implement, then the next step is to book a call. All right. So I'm going to drop a link in the chat here in just 1 second. These spots will go quickly. Okay. So before I do, let me just kind of tee this up. So we've set aside time in the next 48 hours to speak with you personally and create a custom plan. All right. Now, here in just a second, you're going to book a call with one of the experts on my team. All right. This will be about a 45-minute call. And this is with folks who have helped hundreds and in most cases, thousands of people just like you take the next step with their book. All right. Now, the cost of this phone call is free. I've covered the cost of the phone call for you. All you have to do is book a call and then show up for that call. All right. That's the most important part. All right. Now, I'm going to make a bold promise and say that this will be the best 45 minutes you've ever spent on your book. All right. So if you feel like this webinar has been helpful, this call is going to be even more helpful, because there's nothing like getting one-on-one feedback and accountability specific to you, your book, and where you're at. All right. Now I'm going to give you the link here in just a second. But before I do, please only book a call if you're serious about getting this book done. All right. If you've got a high standard and integrity. And then lastly, if you're serious about investing time, money, and energy into the success of this book. All right. If all those things can be said about you, go ahead and book a call right now at this link. All right. Now, again, these spots will go quickly. There's a couple hundred folks here. We only have, obviously, so many slots over the next couple of days. So there's 2 ways to get there and book. All right. Number 1, you can go to the URL on the screen. So selfpublishing.com/apply. Or you should have just seen a pop up in the chat. And there's an easy button right there. There's a green button. It says schedule your call now. Okay. If you see that green button, I want you to click that button. All right, that'll take you to this page. You can book a call on that page. All right. Now, I'll walk you through the process here in just a second, but go ahead and click that button now. Go ahead and book a call with the team. And then if you're on your way to booking a call, or if you just booked a call, comment in the chat, I booked a call. All right, comment in the chat, I booked a call. We do have a surprise bonus for you. I'll tell you about it in a second if you book live while we're on this webinar. All right, now why are we doing this? Right? Why are we hosting this webinar? Why are we offering these calls for free? Well, a couple reasons. Number one, writing and publishing a book changed my life forever. Right? It's one of the best things I've ever done. And I know Sean feels the same way. Right? I love helping people. I love giving back. I know this call is going to be helpful for you, whether we work together or not. Right? Now, obviously, full disclosure on this call, if you're a fit and if you qualify to work with us, we'll talk about what that looks like on the call. All right. Now, again, just being super transparent and upfront, we're super picky about who we work with. We have about 3,000 people apply to work with us every month. We only accept a handful of folks into the program. All right. So we've got about an 8% acceptance rate. Now, Harvard's acceptance rate is about 5 to 6%. So you could say it's almost as hard to get into selfpublishing.com as it is to get into Harvard. And that's not hyperbole. That's just math, baby. But that's because we care about you and the success of your book. And we want to make sure, hey, if we're working together, that you're successful with this thing. All right. So if that's you, if you're interested in taking action on what you learned here today, go ahead and book a call right here at this link. First come, first serve. And then comment in the chat, I booked a call. I see we got a bunch of folks already booking calls. I love it. Awesome. I see Terry says, I booked a call. Love it. A bunch more folks booking calls. Cynthia says, I booked a call. Jennifer booked a call. Michael says, booking a call now. Awesome. Well, hey, if you haven't already, click the green button. Head on over to the page. I'll walk you through this, and then we'll answer some questions. All right. So click the green button. It's going to take you to a page that looks kind of like this. All right. There's a video at the top. You'll scroll right below that video. There's a brief application. All right. So what I want you to do is fill out that application. Okay. And then click the orange button that says find a time. Now, once you do that, there's going to be a calendar that's going to load with times. Okay. Now, what I want you to do is click the time that's closest to now that works for you. All right, once you do that, it's going to take you to a page that looks kind of like this. All right, so on this page, it says, hey, thanks for booking a call. And there's a video on how to get the most out of that call. All right, and there's a couple Easter eggs, some bonuses, some additional content, stuff like that on this page as well. All right. So we do have a fast action bonus. I mentioned this earlier. So love it. We got a bunch of folks who have booked already that already qualify for this. Okay, so if you book a call live while we're on this webinar, all right, that's the first thing. You got to comment in the chat, I booked a call, so that we know that you did this live. All right. Secondly, if you're accepted into the program, and then lastly, you decide to enroll on that call. All right, so all those three things need to be true. A couple things will happen. Number one, you'll qualify for a fast action discount as a friend of Sean and the Think Media team. So we'll hook you up there. And then I will also promote your book to our community and to our Facebook page when it launches. And I'll buy your book in front of the community when it launches. All right. So that's only if you take action while we're live. We love action takers. That's typically a sign that we're going to work well together, right? Because you're going to implement. Okay. So that's typically a sign that you're going to be successful working with us. I see we've got Roger says just booked a call. So does Richard, James, Will. Amazing. Wow. Way more than I can read here. This is fantastic. So this brings me to the 5 things those 100+ authors did. All right. Number 5, drum roll. They made a decision to get started now. Right. For so many people, writing a book is on the maybe someday list. It's on the maybe next year list. All right. How many of you have said that? Maybe you're even saying that right now. It's like, oh man, I don't know if I have the time. Is the timing right? And the sad reality is for most people, maybe someday becomes maybe never. right? And they never get started, right? So they never publish this book. And so my encouragement to you is you've got to get started before you're ready. Okay, there's never going to be a perfect time to write this book. You got to make a decision to get started. All right, and that's the opportunity that you have here today. Is I don't want you to just be inspired by this training. I want you to take action, right? So you've got the opportunity to commit to yourself and commit to this book. And the very next step and the best next step that you can take is to book a call with the team, and let's come alongside you and start to create a custom plan. All right. So if you're ready to implement, go ahead and book a call right now at this link. Comment in the chat. Let me know. I see Jennifer says I booked a call. Love it. So did Cynthia. So did Richard. So did Terrence, Shalonda, Donna, Jen. Amazing. Andrew just booked a call. Will just booked. Awesome. This is amazing. So, hey, it's opportunity time. I hope that we have not only inspired you, that's a big goal of mine on this webinar, is to inspire you that this is possible and you can do it, right? But more importantly, I want you to implement, right? And so that's really what this call is about, is moving from inspiration to implementation, right? I want you to circle today on your calendar, and I want you to be able to point back on today and say, hey, that was the day that changed everything, right? I'm so glad that I showed up to that webinar, that I booked a call, and that I decided to join selfpublishing.com. Right? I can't tell you how many people have said, hey, I almost didn't do it. I almost didn't book a call, and then I almost didn't sign up, but it's changed my life. Right? It's one of the best things I've done. And that's because they took the next step. They bet on themselves. Right? So I want you to be 90 days from now, a year from now, I want you to hold this book in your hands. Right? And again, look back on today and say, shout out to Sean and the Think Media team for bringing Chandler in here, because that day changed everything, right? So I'm excited to work with you and help you with your book. We'll answer a couple questions. I want to bring Brian back here. I see Leah says booked a call. Woohoo! Nice, Leah. I love it. Sharon just booked. So did Laura. Amazing. And a bunch more folks, more than I can read off. So I love it. Thank you, guys. Well, hey, I want to bring Brian back, say a couple things, and then we'll answer a couple questions, and then we'll wrap up.
Absolutely. What an amazing time, guys. Like today, how cool is it? I love what Chandler was just saying, just about who can look back and like circle September 17th, that this was the day I made a decision. And then I'm curious what the next date's going to be. Like, this is the day that it was published. Like, what's that date going to be? So it's so excited for so many of you that are going to jump right in. I grabbed Sean's book, YouTube Secrets. I just wanted to grab it really quick because my goodness, there's so much impact that a book has on your life as well as those around. I mean, we're a team at Think Media of 30 people, and I didn't write the book, but I'm impacted by it, which is so crazy, right? Mm-hmm. I'm just on the team and I'm impacted by it. I think back, Sean talks about this all the time, just as far as like, okay, what kind of impact does the book have? Sure, income, impact on reaching people. And one thing I loved is there's so many of you that said entrepreneur, like I'm ready to go. And I love seeing the entrepreneur part. And one thing that he even talked about very recently with the team was, when you write a book, it helps you get all of those thoughts on paper and like actually create the frameworks. Like you have it, you know how your business works, you know how the things are supposed to work, but until you really get it on paper, my goodness, like that's when things start to really shift. So wherever you're at, like this is so cool to be able to see. And one thing I was recently thinking about this actually while you were talking, Chandler. I was like, oh my goodness, we have so many YouTubers on here. You already have written part of your book. Like you had so many YouTube videos and you've probably already written half your book. You just got to figure out how to get it in paper and like organize it, mind map it, kind of like what he was talking about. And you've got it all set. So I'm so stoked about this. I don't know if you're waiting, trying to make a decision on this, but if you're feeling like time is now, might as well just take a chance on it and see what could happen from here. So excited about today, thankful for today, because I know it's going to be really impactful for so many of you as well as Think Media students.
Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you for saying that, Brian. And I think it's a great point. Two things I would emphasize that you said. One, Sean has done it incredibly well, and it's a great model to follow for everyone here, right? So, I mean, they practice what we're preaching here. And I love how they integrate the book into everything they do. It helps them get customers. It helps them onboard clients, right? Because people now know the methodology. It helps with your team. So your teams all speak in the same language. Like, it's just really cool to see that in the Think Media business via Sean's book, right? And so that's the first thing. And then secondly, like you mentioned, just that feeling of circling today. Like, I've got a guy on the team who says, you know, we get to facilitate one of the 3 best days in someone's life.
It's cool.
Right. It's for a lot of people, it's okay. Maybe when you got married, maybe when you had a kid or had your kids, and then when you publish your book, it's this artifact. It's this thing that long after you're off this earth is still here. Right. And it's still making an impact, and it makes an impact in a very large way, while also growing your income and growing your business. And so, to Brian's point, if you've already started creating videos, you've probably written a lot of the book. You just didn't know it, right? So book a call with the team. We'd love to help you take the next step with this. I see Mayor just booked a call. Colleen just booked a call. Lucy booked a call. So did Marco, Laura, Sharon, and then Richard. We will call you at the number you provide through that booking process. And so once you've booked, if you'll just look for an email and a calendar invite, okay, and then make sure it's just confirmed and on your calendar, and then we'll call you at that number at the time that you booked. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and say last call to book a call if you haven't already, and then comment in the chat and let me know. So we got a bunch of more folks booking right now. I'm going to answer a couple questions, and then we will wrap up here in just a second. I see. Let's see. Donna says, I don't know if it's on the calendar. So yeah, double check your email. Look for the calendar invite and a confirmation email. Oh man, Sarah, what a great topic. I would book a call with the team. I would start mind mapping, and I don't think your story has to be complete to write that book, right? Because you're a couple steps ahead of probably most of the people who are already asking you to write that book. Like, if you've got people in your life asking you to write a book, that's probably a sign that you should write the book.
It's a good sign.
I mean, because people don't just, I don't know if you noticed, but people don't just randomly say that, right? I don't just randomly walk up to people and say, hey, you should write a book about this thing, unless I mean it, right? So I would say, you know, we'd be happy to help with that and book with the team, and let's chat. I see a couple people asking the same question, which is, the E in the more writing method. And I'm so happy you guys asked this, because this is a little Easter egg to see if people are paying attention. All right. So you win. Everybody who asked that question, you guys are our winners today. The E stands for editing. All right. So more writing method, mind map, outline, rough draft, editing. We walk you through those key milestones in our program, and we'll coach you through that. This is also in the book as well. You can learn more on kind of each of those sections. All right. So a couple things as we wrap up. Last call to book a call, y'all. Click the button, the green button, or go to this URL and book at that page. Let's see. Arunan says just booked. Roxana just booked. Nancy booked. Steve just booked. Anna just booked. I love it. Well, so exciting. Hey, we're excited to work with a bunch of you on your books. We've already worked with a bunch of folks in the Think Media community, and it's just so fun. You guys are incredible. And that's a sign of just an awesome company and awesome people like Brian, like Sean, and just the whole team over there. So I want to cover a couple things as we wrap. One is, first off, I just want to give a shout out to Sean and Think Media, Brian, everybody. And so if you'll just in the chat, let them know if you appreciated this webinar, and just give them a thank you and a shout out in the chat. And so that's the first thing. Michael just booked. I love it. So second thing, I see a couple people asking about a replay. So we're going to send you a replay within the next 24 hours. Okay. We'll send you a replay within the next 24 hours. And then what should happen is automatically, all right, within the next 15 minutes or so, as a thank you for showing up to the webinar, we're going to send you a link to my slides, notes, digital copy of my book. That's just a thank you for showing up, staying to the end. And so those are kind of a few important things and next steps and all that stuff. And that's pretty much it. So as we wrap here, we got a lot of love for the Think Media team. Awesome. Brian, any final thoughts as we wrap?
Yeah, I was actually, so two final thoughts. I was doing a little scrolling because we always track how many book sales and stuff like that has YouTube Secrets made. And it's wild. I was watching, you and Sean were having a conversation on, I think, our podcast at one point. And at that point, it was about 65,000, I think, copies sold, which is incredible. And just as of the end of August, we reached 137,000, which is like, what in the world? Like, the business is growing because of it. And like, I'm impacted, our team is impacted. But even on a different scale, we have one of our elite students who she went through self-publishing. And what she did was she actually teaches like gardening. I guess that's an easy way to put it. Teaches gardening and all of that kind of thing. And she partnered it with her YouTube channel. And now she has been able to make, she made her first $10,000 a month earlier this year ever with this. And then the next month she hit it again. And then the next month she hit it again. It was so crazy. She broke her record as far as like income for her channel. And a huge part of that was the products that she was able to sell. She sold her book in combination with a planner that she created. So she doubled up on it. And oh my goodness, it's so cool to see like what's actually possible when you just take the step, when you just make it happen. So really excited about it. Hopefully if you're on the fence, who knows? This could be the time. It really could be for you.
That's incredible. What's her name?
Her name is Jacqueline. Her YouTube channel is Wild Floridian. Hopefully she's okay with me saying that. Sorry, Jacqueline.
Cool. Well, shout out Jacqueline. That's incredible. I'm like, we're going to have to, I'm going to put together a case study on that. That's amazing. Well, hey, shout out Jacqueline, shout out Think Media team, and shout out to all of you who are here, paying attention, staying to the end, booking a call and committing to yourself in this book. I'm so excited for you. As you can probably tell, I get super fired up about this. If you're on the fence, now is the time to lean into this thing. Take the next step, book a call with the team. All right. Comment in the chat. I booked a call. Click the button before I close out just so you have it up and can book it right after this if you haven't already. I see we got a bunch more folks in the chat saying I booked a call. I love it. I love it. I love it. Michael is booked. Richard. Awesome. Well, hey, thanks, y'all. Have a great day. Thank you, Brian. Love you guys. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, y'all.